The world froze around me as I read the email that would change everything. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, frozen in place as the words from my fiancé, Henry, flashed on the screen. He had forgotten to log out of his account again, something he never did. The message from his best friend's fiancé echoed through the empty room, sending a chill down my spine. Can't wait for this weekend. Once she's out of the picture, we can finally stop sneaking around. The thread stretched back 3 years. 3 years of lies. Of him calling me his one and only while I cooked his meals, cleaned his clothes, and smiled at company parties. The evidence was right in front of me. Intimate texts, hotel confirmations, photos I could never unsee. My hands trembled as I forwarded everything to my personal email account, the one Henry knew nothing about. Before I could process it fully, I heard him coming through the front door. I quickly closed the browser, heart pounding, the world collapsing quietly around me. "Hey babe, how was work?" Henry asked casually, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I responded mechanically, serving him dinner like nothing had changed. The man I had trusted for years, who had always been the steady one in my life, was a stranger. The man I'd relied on, who I thought would be my future, was someone who had been secretly betraying me for months. I had built my world around him. Now, everything felt hollow. That night, as he fell asleep beside me, I lay still in the darkness, watching him breathe, every word from that email echoing in my head. I hadn't been looking for the truth, but I had found it nonetheless. I hadn't cried, not yet. Instead, something colder, sharper, took root in me. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I went about my day like nothing was different. I served Henry his breakfast, kissed him goodbye, and then began my hunt. I started by cracking open his laptop. His password? My birth date. The irony not lost on me. Inside, I found everything I needed. Months of emails, deleted photos, and the location history on his phone that showed dozens of visits to my sister's apartment. By noon, I was wearing gloves as I created backup files, screenshots, and a detailed timeline of their affair. There were no breakdowns, no tears, just cold, hard determination. Every text, every detail, every piece of the puzzle came together. On day 3, I followed him. I watched from my car as he parked in front of a quaint Italian restaurant, the place we'd had our first date, the place he'd proposed. I snapped pictures as my sister, Mia, pulled into the parking lot. My sister, the one who had always been my perfect sibling, the one who never failed to outshine me in everything. Now in my fiancé's arms. I could have stormed in, caused a scene. Part of me wanted to confront her, to drag her out and shout until I couldn't shout anymore. But instead, I turned away and drove to an electronics store, purchasing 3 hidden cameras. I didn't need to scream. I needed evidence. That evening, while Henry showered, I set up the first camera in the living room, disguised as a phone charger. The second I tucked into a bookshelf in the bedroom. The third would wait for when I could access his office. Each camera connected to an app on my phone, streaming live footage. I could see our most intimate spaces now contaminated by their deceit. "I feel like you're distracted," Henry noted that evening, reaching for my hand across the table. I squeezed his fingers, forcing a smile. "Wedding stress," I lied. Nothing more. The days that followed became a routine. Each night, I combed through the footage, creating spreadsheets, labeling photographs, and documenting their betrayal. The grotesque intimacy of knowing exactly when and how they deceived me began to numb me. I tracked their meetings, noted their every excuse, pieced together the puzzle they thought I couldn't see. 3 weeks into this, I discovered the truth. They'd been seeing each other for nearly 7 months, since the moment we'd gotten engaged. It had started at my engagement party. The toast, the hugs, my sister's happy tears. The cameras showed Henry on the phone with Mia, planning the big reveal. The barbecue was in 3 weeks, the one Henry had insisted we host for our families. They were planning it then, the perfect public humiliation. My sister, who had always craved the spotlight, wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a performance. When the day finally arrived, I went about my preparations with surgical precision. I made sure to look the part, my dress, my smile, my calm demeanor. Henry, completely unaware, carried on with his usual charming facade. And then, as our families gathered, I watched from the sidelines, my heart pounding as the day's events unfolded. Just before the toast, I stood up, my glass raised in my hand. "I'd like to make a toast," I began, my voice steady and firm. To the happy couple, my fiancé, and my sister. Henry's smile faltered for a moment, confusion clouding his face. Mia's eyes darted nervously between me and Henry, her confident facade cracking just enough for me to see the fear behind it. I dropped the ring into my champagne glass. I've been through enough, and I'm done, I said, my voice filled with an icy calm. I'm not your fool anymore, I whispered under my breath, watching the shock and realization hit both of them as they processed what had just happened. I didn't need to yell to cause a scene. The look in their eyes told me everything I needed to know. They had underestimated me. Later, as I walked away from the family barbecue, no longer the scorned woman, but the one who had reclaimed her power, I knew I was leaving behind more than just a broken relationship. I was leaving behind a life defined by their expectations, by their lies. The next chapter had already begun. A chapter where I would no longer be anyone's second choice. A chapter where I was free to write my own story, one filled with strength, purpose, and no room for betrayal. If you've ever experienced betrayal like this, share your story below. And if this tale of resilience resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories of triumph. Your support means everything. The tension had been building for months, a slow, simmering storm that finally broke one night in our shower. The sound of water running concealed my breakdown as I slid down the tiled wall, hugging my knees, silently screaming until my throat was raw. I gave myself exactly 20 minutes to fall apart before standing up, drying off, and returning to my meticulously organized spreadsheets. I had a plan, and I wouldn't let myself fall victim to my emotions again. In my darkest moments, I thought about confronting them, ending the charade in a dramatic showdown. But something deeper, colder, kept me methodical. If they wanted a public spectacle, they would get one, but not the one they were planning. Their betrayal deserved more than a private conversation, more than tearful accusations that could be easily dismissed as the jealous sister. I would not give them that satisfaction. For nearly 3 months, I maintained the perfect facade. I pretended to discuss wedding venues, acted as though I was excited about the guest list, even had lunch with my sister, Nora, where she helped me choose flowers while wearing earrings Henry had bought for me with our shared credit card. Every movement, every word was calculated, each one a step closer to the moment I would expose them for who they truly were. During a family dinner, my mother commented, "You seem different lately, more confident." If only she knew that the confidence she was seeing was just the calm calculation of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Every fake smile, every pretend kiss with Henry, every sisterly hug with Nora was a step closer to revealing the truth. The barbecue was approaching, and it would be the perfect stage for my plan. I had gathered every scrap of evidence I needed. Their words, their plans, their betrayal, all documented. They thought they were in control, but they had no idea I was counting every move, every card they dealt from the bottom of the deck. The night before the barbecue, I slid into bed next to Henry, my face a perfect mask of contentment. "I'm excited about tomorrow," I said truthfully. "I think it's going to be a day none of us will ever forget." He pulled me close, kissing my forehead. "I can't wait." For once, we weren't lying to each other. I woke before sunrise the next day, overhearing Henry's final confirmation about their plans for the barbecue. My mind was unusually clear, focused. I had spent weeks gathering evidence of their betrayal, and now it was time to set my own stage. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned to Henry that I was thinking of making a special announcement at Dad's retirement barbecue. "Maybe we could finally set a wedding date," I suggested, stirring cream into my coffee. Henry nearly choked on his toast. Don't you think that might steal Dad's thunder?" I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Dad would love it. Besides, Mom's been asking me about save the dates." I watched his eyes dart away, calculating. "Well, if you think it's a good idea," I smiled, knowing I had him exactly where I wanted him. "Great. I'll tell Mom to make sure Nora can make it. She's been so busy lately." My mother's sigh over the phone later that afternoon only strengthened my plan. "You know your sister is always busy with something, but I'll make sure she's there." Perfect. With one conversation, I had set the stage for their public humiliation, all while maintaining the illusion of my blissful ignorance. Henry relaxed after my call, even suggesting we watch a movie together. The first time in weeks, he hadn't found an excuse to check his phone in private. Becoming the oblivious bride-to-be had become my greatest performance. I left bridal magazines open to reception venues, pinned wedding dresses on shared Pinterest boards, and even scheduled a cake tasting for the week after the barbecue. Each action was carefully calculated to reinforce their belief that I had no idea what was really going on. "You seem excited about the wedding lately," Henry commented one evening as I browsed honeymoon destinations. "Just ready to make it official," I replied, looking up with practiced adoration. "After all this time planning, I'm excited to finally be Mrs. Thompson." The lie tasted bitter, but his relieved smile confirmed that my performance was working. Meanwhile, I was methodically dismantling our shared life. During lunch breaks, I visited my bank to open a separate account and transferred small amounts of savings, enough that Henry wouldn't notice when the joint statement arrived. I also contacted our landlord about breaking our lease, citing a potential job opportunity that hadn't materialized yet. Henry didn't question it. The engagement ring presented a particular challenge. Henry had spent $18,500 on it, money that should have gone toward a house down payment. The princess-cut diamond in the platinum setting had once symbolized our future. Now it represented nothing but lies. While searching for more evidence, I found the jeweler's receipt tucked in Henry's desk drawer, along with a small velvet box, presumably containing Nora's ring. I didn't open it. Some wounds didn't need to be inflicted on myself. The day Henry was meeting clients, I visited a jewelry district across town. The small shop specializing in replicas provided exactly what I needed: a near-perfect copy of my engagement ring for $30. The zirconia sparkled with artificial brilliance, indistinguishable from a diamond to the untrained eye. "Anniversary gift?" the jeweler asked as he boxed it up. "Something like that," I replied. That night, while Henry showered, I made the swap. His authentic ring went into my purse, and the fake one took its place. Henry never noticed. Men rarely do. With 2 weeks remaining before the barbecue, I focused on my escape plan. I renewed my passport during a lunch that I spent alone at the passport office. I researched destinations that symbolized new beginnings, settling on Santorini. Its white buildings and blue domes represented the clean slate I craved. I booked a one-way ticket for the morning after the barbecue using points from a credit card Henry didn't know about. A small vacation rental overlooking the caldera would be my sanctuary. The day before the barbecue, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my dress, ready to step into the next phase of my life. The old me, the one who had been betrayed, would not be attending that barbecue. Instead, a new version of myself would emerge, strong, free, and in control. I would take back what had been stolen from me, piece by calculated piece. And as the barbecue unfolded, I knew the truth. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the architect of my own fate. 2 weeks in Santorini had given me the distance I needed to recover, a sanctuary before the storm I was about to unleash. Taking a half day on Friday, I casually mentioned to Greg that I had some errands to run before the big family gathering, nail appointments, things like that. He nodded absently, his thumbs flying across his phone screen, undoubtedly texting Melissa. "No problem," he muttered. "I've got meetings all afternoon." The errands were more deliberate. I stopped at a safety deposit box where I hid my passport, important documents, and the real engagement ring. I withdrew enough cash to sustain me for weeks, stashing it in various compartments of a new suitcase I had hidden at Dana's apartment. Dana was the only person who knew pieces of my plan. "Are you sure about this?" she asked when I dropped off the suitcase. "Trust me," I replied, giving her a tight hug. "This is better." The final piece of my plan clicked into place 3 days before the barbecue. Greg was out on the golf course with colleagues, and I composed a note to accompany the fake ring. Cheap, like your taste. Simple. Director. Devastating in its brevity. I sealed it in an envelope, tucked it into the side pocket of my weekend bag, alongside a USB drive containing carefully selected footage of their betrayal. The night before the barbecue, everything was prepared with surgical precision. My overnight bag contained only what I needed for the night at my parents' house, plus the materials for my revenge. My real luggage, with clothes, cash, and necessities for my new life, waited safely at Dana's. Airline confirmation and rental details were memorized, and screenshots were saved to an email draft, accessible from any device. Standing in the bathroom, I studied my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed different, harder around the eyes, mouth set in a determined line. I practiced my expressions. Surprise, hurt, dignified silence. Each would serve its purpose tomorrow. Early night? Greg suggested, wrapping his arms around me from behind and meeting my eyes in the mirror. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, I replied, offering him a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The biggest, I added silently. Sleep came surprisingly easily that night. There's peace and certainty in knowing exactly what comes next. As dawn broke on barbecue day, I felt strangely serene. The anxiety and anguish of the past months had burned away, leaving only resolution. I packed the final items in my overnight bag: the envelope with the devastating note, the USB drive, a change of clothes for tomorrow's flight. I double-checked the family group chat to ensure everything was set up, confirming that everyone would receive the video simultaneously. Greg bustled around nervously, changing shirts twice, checking his pocket repeatedly, undoubtedly making sure Melissa's ring was secure. I pretended not to notice, busying myself with a fruit salad for the barbecue, which I knew I would never deliver. "Ready?" he asked, his keys jangling in his hand, his voice slightly higher than usual, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. I took one last look around our apartment, once a home, but now just a stage set for betrayal. "Absolutely ready," I said, and for the first time in months, I wasn't lying. The 40-minute drive to my parents' suburban home felt like an eternity. Greg's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his left hand repeatedly patting his jacket pocket where Melissa's ring waited. The radio filled the silence with meaningless pop songs about forever love. "Nervous about something?" I asked innocently as we turned onto my parents' street, lined with the familiar maple trees I had climbed as a child. He startled, then muttered, "What?" "Oh, just thinking about work stuff." I smiled, placing my hand gently on his arm. "Try to relax and enjoy today, okay?" The irony wasn't lost on me comforting him about the stress of his planned betrayal. When we arrived, balloons marked the mailbox, and the smell of charcoal filled the air. My uncle's pickup and my cousin's minivan were parked along the curb, but near the end, I saw Melissa's blue Honda. "Looks like everyone's here already," I noted, watching Greg's reaction. He scanned the vehicles, lingering on Melissa's car. "Guess we're the last ones," he muttered, checking his hair in the rearview mirror. Mom greeted us at the door with a tight hug, ushering us toward the backyard, where voices and laughter mingled with classic rock from Dad's speaker system. I spotted Melissa immediately, perched on the patio furniture in a sundress I recognized from our joint shopping trip last month. The same sundress I'd admired but decided was too expensive. Apparently, Greg's credit card had different standards for her. Our eyes met across the yard. Her smile faltered momentarily before she recovered, waving with excessive enthusiasm. "Evelyn! Greg!" she called, bouncing over to hug me too tightly. Her perfume, a scent I recognized from Greg's credit card statement, nearly choked me. "Traffic," Greg explained lamely, his eyes darting between us. The nervousness was almost comical. Two amateur actors forgetting their lines on opening night. As I moved through the gathering, greeting relatives and accepting congratulations on my engagement, I noticed the first strange looks. Aunt Patricia squeezed my hand a beat too long, her eyes full of pity. Uncle Dave started a conversation about my wedding plans, then awkwardly changed the subject when Greg approached. Cousin Michael avoided eye contact entirely. They knew, or at least they suspected. Near the grill, my father looked unusually somber for his retirement celebration. When I hugged him, his arms tightened around me protectively. "You doing okay, Pumpkin?" he asked quietly. "Of course, Dad. It's your big day," I replied, my performance flawless, but the knot in my stomach tightened. How many others had Melissa hurt? The summer evening stretched out before us, its heavy air thick with the smell of grilled food and fake smiles. Greg and Melissa were at it again, their rehearsed act playing out in front of an unsuspecting family. My heart beat steadily, each pulse a reminder of how far I'd come and what was about to unfold. My mother appeared with lemonade, her smile too bright, her eyes darting nervously. Greg, Melissa was just asking about the Hendersons' house listing. You know, real estate? Maybe you could give her some advice? She said, an obvious setup. Greg nodded eagerly, his usual charm making an appearance. Sure thing, Mrs. Adams, he said, though his voice held a nervous edge. I watched as they drifted toward a quiet corner of the yard, heads bent close in conversation. Their attempt at subtlety would have been painful to witness if I hadn't been so far beyond pain. The realization hit me, sharp and clear. This wasn't about them trying to hide something. It was about me finally understanding that nothing they said or did could break me anymore. They're not very good at this, are they? The voice came from my niece, Jenny, who had appeared at my elbow with a plate of potato salad. I turned to her, my expression neutral. She rolled her eyes. Please, Mom told me to be prepared for drama today. Adults think teenagers are clueless, she said, nodding toward Greg and Melissa. He's been checking his pocket every 2 minutes, and she keeps looking at her reflection in her phone screen. Something's up. My heart warmed toward Jenny, this unexpected ally. Want to help me get the extra ice from the garage, away from prying eyes? I squeezed her hand. Whatever happens today, just remember, appearances can be deceiving. Her eyes widened. You know? I simply nodded. Just watch. When we returned, Greg was helping my dad at the grill while Melissa arranged seating for the meal. The tension was palpable. Every movement seemed to be part of a strained choreography, a dance of forced normalcy. Lunch was served buffet style, and I positioned myself between my elderly grandparents, engaging them in conversation about their recent cruise. Across the table, Greg kept checking his watch, while Melissa fidgeted with her hair. My mother's smile grew increasingly brittle as she refilled drinks and urged everyone to eat. After the meal, my dad stood to make his retirement speech. Family members raised their glasses in toasts, cameras popped for photos, and for a moment, the genuine celebration almost overshadowed the undercurrent of anticipation. I allowed myself a brief moment of happiness for my father. 50 years at the same company, respected and admired. At least this part of the day wasn't tainted by betrayal. As dessert was being served, Greg caught my eye and nodded toward the old oak tree at the edge of the yard. Can we talk for a minute? He asked, loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. The moment had arrived. I followed him, feeling strangely calm, almost floating above the scene. This was simply the final act of a play where I already knew the ending. Under the tree, where I had once played as a child, Greg turned to face me, his expression a mixture of regret and resolution. He took my hands in his, the rehearsed gesture making my skin crawl. Evelyn, he began, his voice carefully pitched to carry just far enough. These past few months have made me realize something important. He paused, ensuring he had an audience. Several relatives had casually drifted closer, pretending to admire Mom's flower beds. Melissa stood halfway between us and the patio, her face a mask of false concern. I care about you deeply, Greg continued, his voice thick with emotion. But I've realized you're not... Not what? I asked, keeping my tone calm. You're not wife material, he finally said, the words heavy with finality. There it was, the line he had rehearsed, the knife he had chosen to twist. I watched him falter, noticing how my lack of reaction shook him. Behind him, I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth, my father's face darken with anger. I said nothing, watching him flounder. He tried again. What I mean is we want different things, and I... His voice cracked. I found someone who understands me better. And with that, the game was on. Melissa stepped forward, perfectly positioned as cameras emerged from pockets, ready to catch their big moment. Greg released my hands and walked toward her, pulling the ring box from his pocket. Melissa, he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard. You're everything I've been looking for. Will you marry me? Her practiced tears gleamed in the afternoon sunlight as she covered her mouth in feigned shock. Yes, she exclaimed. Yes, of course. Cameras flashed as he slid the ring onto her finger. A few confused relatives applauded uncertainly. Cousin Michael looked like he might be ill. Aunt Patricia openly glared at Melissa. I stood perfectly still, my face deliberately blank. No tears, no screams, no drink thrown, no dramatic exit. Just silence. The one response they hadn't prepared for. Greg's smile faltered. Melissa's eyes darted around nervously as the expected drama failed to materialize. My father started toward us, fury evident in his stride, but I subtly shook my head, stopping him in his tracks. "Congratulations," I said finally, my voice carrying clearly through the awkward silence. "You deserve each other." The simplicity of my response unnerved them both. This wasn't the script they'd written. The hysterical ex-fiancé, the dramatic scene they'd hoped for to justify their betrayal. It all crumbled in the face of my composure. As relatives converged around them with uncomfortable questions and forced congratulations, I walked calmly to the dessert table. I selected a piece of my father's favorite chocolate cake and brought it to him with a reassuring smile. "I'm okay, Dad," I said quietly. "Trust me." For the next hour, I moved through the gathering with practiced ease, deflecting concerned questions with simple responses. "It's for the best," I said. "These things happen. I'm fine, really." Each calm word was another crack in Melissa's triumphant facade. I caught her watching me, uncertainty growing in her eyes, as her moment of victory failed to deliver. Greg looked increasingly uncomfortable as relatives cornered him with pointed questions about the timing. As the sun began to set and guests began to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The final act of betrayal was over, and for the first time, I was free. The apartment felt cold, almost foreign, as I arrived that night. The streetlights outside blurred past as I parked for the last time, walking through the door as though I was stepping into a different life. It wasn't my home anymore. It was a stage, and I was the director of the final act. My heart didn't race. I was calm, almost eerily calm. The worst had already happened, and I had survived it. Everything I had planned for in the past 3 months had led to this moment. This was my final step in the long process of reclaiming control over my life. No more tears, no more heartache, only precision. I moved through the apartment with methodical efficiency, collecting the last remnants of my past, an old photo of my grandparents, a small jewelry box from my mother, a leather-bound journal I'd kept since college. These weren't just belongings. They were pieces of my identity, untouched by the betrayal Greg and Melissa had tried to ruin. Once I changed into comfortable clothes, I set to work. I dismantled the hidden cameras, erasing all the evidence of my surveillance. Now, all I had left was the final step, Melissa's gift. I retrieved the envelope from my weekend bag, running my finger over the note I had written. "Cheap like your taste," I whispered to myself. The words didn't feel as cutting as they should have, not after what I had witnessed at the barbecue. I opened the envelope and added a postscript. "P.S. Check the family group chat at 6 a.m. You'll both be famous." It was subtle enough to intrigue them, clear enough to ensure they'd lose sleep over it. This wasn't just revenge. It was my way of finally taking back what they had stolen from me, my dignity. I knew exactly where Melissa would look when she arrived here with Greg, the jewelry box on the dresser. It had been a familiar spot. Greg had seen me place my engagement ring there countless times. I positioned the fake ring at the center, propping the note against it. I knew Melissa's insecurities well. She wouldn't be able to resist comparing her new ring to the one I had discarded. With everything set, I moved to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. It was time to finalize my digital revenge. I had spent weeks editing the footage from the hidden cameras, carefully piecing together the most damning clips. The opening scene showed Greg on the phone with Melissa in our living room, laughing about how I hadn't noticed a thing. Next, Greg and Melissa on our couch, his hands sliding up her thigh while I was visiting my parents. Then, Melissa mocking my wedding magazine collection, rolling her eyes and laughing with Greg. But the ultimate violation came later. Greg rehearsing his "you're not wife" material speech in front of the bathroom mirror, Melissa coaching him through the lines via text. There was no dramatic music, no commentary, just raw, unfiltered evidence. Truth needed no embellishment. I scheduled the video to upload to the family group chat at exactly 6 a.m. It was late enough for them to have spent the night celebrating, but early enough to ensure maximum family viewership on Sunday morning. The email confirmations for my flight and Santorini accommodation arrived, and I forwarded them to a secure account. My new burner phone was charged and ready, programmed with essential contacts. Dana had confirmed she would drive me to the airport at 7:30 a.m. Everything was in place. As I checked the family group chat one last time, I found it already buzzing with confused messages. Mom, Evelyn, please call me. We're worried about you. Dad, what the hell happened today? Greg isn't answering my calls. Aunt Patricia, I always thought there was something off about that young man. I didn't respond. Tomorrow's video would answer all of their questions far more effectively than I ever could. At midnight, I heard Greg's key in the lock. I froze. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to stay at Melissa's. I slipped into the hallway closet, hidden as he entered alone. He moved quietly, as if trying not to wake me. I watched through the sliver between the door and frame as he gathered toiletries, a change of clothes, and his laptop. He paused at our bedroom door, seemingly debating whether to check on me. After a moment's hesitation, he turned away. Coward. He couldn't even face me after the public performance he'd put on. As he gathered his things, his phone buzzed repeatedly. He answered it in hushed tones. I know, babe. It went perfectly. No, I haven't seen her. I think she's asleep, just getting some stuff, then coming back to you. She barely reacted, just like we thought. No, her parents were upset, but they'll get over it. I'll grab the ring paperwork too for insurance purposes. Each word cemented my resolve. I remained perfectly still until he left, locking the door behind him. Only then did I emerge, checking everything I had set up. The fake ring was still in place. The video was still set to upload. I slept surprisingly well that night. The deep, dreamless sleep of someone who had finally relinquished uncertainty. My alarm woke me at 5:30 a.m. I showered, dressed, and packed my final items with practiced efficiency. At 5:55, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, my phone propped against my water glass, camera ready. I wanted to witness the moment my revenge began. At exactly 6 a.m., my phone pinged. Video uploaded successfully to family barbecue chat. I imagined Greg and Melissa waking up, their sleepy eyes catching the first notification. The trap had been set, and now the curtain would rise on their grand reveal. I sat back, waiting for the chaos to unfold. This was my moment. The calm before the storm. The revenge delivered on my terms. The morning after the barbecue, I woke in the quiet, unfamiliar space of my Santorini villa. The soft Greek sun streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the room. For a moment, I forgot where I was. My arm reached instinctively toward the empty side of the bed, and then reality rushed back. The barbecue, the betrayal, the video. I had done it. I was free. I sat up, my heart pounding with a new rhythm. One that wasn't fueled by anger or pain, but something different. Something that felt like possibility. The worst had happened, and I had survived it. Now it was my turn to decide what came next. I stepped onto the terrace, breathing in the salty air. The sky was a seamless blend of blue, and the sea stretched endlessly before me. It was beautiful, like a painting, untouched by the chaos I'd left behind. Breakfast awaited me. Greek yogurt with honey, fresh figs, and a strong cup of coffee. There was a note from Elena, the property manager, explaining that she'd arranged it after my long sleep. As I ate, I watched fishing boats cut through the water below. The stillness was surreal. There was no noise, no buzzing phone, no Greg's frantic calls, only the gentle lapping of the sea against the cliffs and the hum of the world moving on without me. I reached for my burner phone, powered it on, and felt a small pang in my chest. Dozens of missed calls and messages flooded in. I scrolled through them, Greg's desperate pleas, Melissa's frantic texts, but I only opened the ones from my parents and Dana. Mom, we're so sorry, sweetheart. We had no idea. Are you safe? Dad, that video showed everything we needed to know. Take all the time you need. We're here when you're ready. Dana, check your old phone. Total meltdown happening. Greg showed up at your parents' house crying. They wouldn't let him in. Your dad apparently used some colorful language. Call me when you can. I smiled softly at the messages, a small laugh escaping. Despite everything, my family had my back. Dana's text made me chuckle. I could picture Greg, a mess at my parents' house, begging for forgiveness, his world falling apart around him. It was hard to feel sorry for him now. I set my phone down and looked out at the horizon, my fingers tracing the edge of the terrace. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows over the caldera. It felt like a new day, not just in the literal sense, but in my life. I had come here to escape the pain of betrayal. But in this quiet corner of the world, I realized it wasn't just about escaping. It was about starting over, building something new, something for me. The weight of the past had lifted, and I could breathe again. Later, I took a walk through the small village of Oya, the whitewashed houses sparkling under the bright sun. The narrow streets were lined with cafes, galleries, and shops, but I walked with no destination in mind. It was the freedom of simply being. No plans, no expectations. Just me. As I returned to my villa, I found Elena waiting with a warm smile. "How are you?" she asked gently, almost as if sensing the transformation in me. "I'm good," I replied, smiling back. "Better than I've been in a long time." And it was true. For the first time in months, I felt like I had control over my life again. I wasn't running from the past. I was walking toward a future of my own making. The next few days passed in a blur of quiet reflection and new experiences. I explored the island, met other travelers, and let myself relax in ways I hadn't allowed myself to in years. I kept my phone off, savoring the peace, the stillness of being untethered from the world I had left behind. Greg and Melissa's messages became less frequent, though I could tell their world was crumbling. They were struggling to repair the damage they'd done. But that was their mess now, not mine. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I found myself standing on the terrace again, the cool breeze ruffling my hair. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I didn't need to know what was happening with them anymore. I had everything I needed right here. The beauty of the island, the clarity in my mind, and the quiet assurance that I had made the right choice. The moment of revenge had passed. Now it was time for me to rebuild, to forge a new life without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. The life I was starting wasn't about revenge or even closure. It was about creating something new from the ashes of the past. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The morning after the barbecue, I woke up in my Santorini villa, the quiet warmth of the sun spilling through the windows. For a moment, I had no idea where I was. My body reached instinctively for the empty side of the bed, but then the weight of the past few days hit me all over again. The betrayal, the video, the escape. It had all happened, and now it was time to move forward. I sat up, feeling a strange stillness within me, as if the chaos had been swept away by the very distance I'd put between myself and everything that had held me down. The worst had passed, and I had survived it. Now I could finally begin living life on my own terms. I stepped out onto the terrace. The horizon stretched before me, the endless blue sea meeting the clear sky in a seamless blend of color. I took a deep breath, the air crisp and pure. It was a beauty untouched by the mess I had left behind. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the calm that came with knowing I had taken control of my life. I ate breakfast alone, savoring the simplicity of it. Fresh figs, yogurt with honey, strong coffee. Everything felt like a new beginning. As I finished, I turned on my phone, finding dozens of missed calls, texts, and notifications. Greg's frantic messages, Melissa's threats, all the voices of my past life trying to claw their way back in. But I only read the messages from my parents and Dana. "Mom, we're so sorry, sweetheart. We had no idea. Are you safe?" "Dad, that video showed everything we needed to know. Take all the time you need. We're here when you're ready." "Dana, check your old phone. Total meltdown happening. Greg showed up at your parents' house crying. They wouldn't let him in. Your dad apparently used some colorful language. Call me when you can. I smiled softly at the messages. My family had my back. Dana's text made me laugh. I could easily picture Greg, a mess, begging for forgiveness, while my father was probably on the warpath. I set the phone down, turning my attention back to the stunning view. It felt like everything I had been running from was now miles away, literally and figuratively. This was my time. I was free, and for the first time in ages, I could breathe without fear. The next few days in Santorini passed in a blur of exploration. I hiked trails, photographed wildflowers growing in volcanic rock, and wandered through the narrow streets, letting the island's beauty wash over me. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil I had left behind. In the evenings, I began to connect with other travelers. A British woman named Claire became a regular dinner companion. We shared stories about the places we'd been, the people we'd met, and the lives we were building. I also spent time with Elena, the property manager, who took me to local pottery classes. Creating something new, Elena told me with a laugh, was always messy. I watched her reshape my collapsed clay attempts, and something clicked inside me. The clay was never ruined. It was just waiting for a new hand to reshape it. My time in Santorini was a rebirth. I wasn't just escaping, I was rediscovering myself. And then, in the middle of my peaceful rhythm, Dana called. Greg's telling people you made up the video out of jealousy, she said. But the video speaks for itself. Melissa's deleted all her social media after the comments started piling in. Their relationship's imploding. Sounds like karma's working overtime, I said, my voice steady. So, what's next for you? Dana asked. Coming back to face the music? I thought for a moment, my eyes on the sun dipping into the sea. I've applied for a remote position with that publishing house Greg always dismissed as a hobby. I have an interview next week via Zoom. Dana's excitement was palpable through the phone. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on my needs, not what someone else expected from me. It was a small but powerful realization that, from this point forward, I would be the architect of my own future. On my last evening in Santorini, I dressed with care, selecting a blue sundress from a local designer. I made reservations at the most beautiful restaurant on the island, requesting a private table with a view of the caldera. As the sun began its nightly transformation into a burst of colors, I ordered champagne, not to celebrate the destruction of my past, but to honor the reconstruction of my future. As the waiter poured my glass, I checked my phone one last time. An email had arrived just an hour earlier. Dear Miss Adams, we are pleased to offer you the position of remote editorial assistant. I felt tears well in my eyes, not from anger or sadness, but from joy. This was my victory. I had chosen this path, and it was all coming together. I lifted my glass toward the horizon, where the first stars began to appear. To new beginnings, I whispered, savoring the champagne that tasted of freedom. Behind me lay the ashes of betrayal, but ahead there was nothing but possibility. A future all my own. I paid the bill, smiling at the waiter, then walked slowly back to my villa under the moonlit sky. The air carried the sweet scent of jasmine and salt, a reminder that endings and beginnings could exist side by side. As I walked, I thought briefly of Greg and Melissa. I didn't need to linger on their fate. Their betrayal had pushed me to where I needed to be, and for that, I was oddly grateful. The next morning, I boarded a flight to a new city, a new life, unshackled from the chains of my past. The woman returning was not the same one who had fled. That Evelyn had been defined by her relationships. Daughter, sister, fiancé. This Evelyn, tempered by fire and healed by distance, belonged to herself. As the plane soared into the sky, I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the past lift off my shoulders. I had won, not through revenge alone, but through the strength of reclaiming my own story. And now the future was mine to write,